We're going live on YouTube in just a moment, and then I'll share my screen and we'll start letting everybody in. We're going live on YouTube in just a moment, and then I'll share my screen. All right, good morning, everyone on YouTube. Hello. We will get started in just a moment. All right, Brian, just a quick thumbs up. Can you see my screen? Amazing. All right. All right, here. Good morning, everybody. Happy Friday. Good morning. Good morning. We'll give a moment just for everyone to start funneling in. If you can, in the chat, just share with us where you're tuning in from. That way we know the chat is working and we can interact with all of you, as well as get to know where you're coming from in the world. Hi, Lee from Oregon, Charlene in LA, you, Nicholas, good morning, Catherine in San Francisco, hello. Good morning, good morning. All right, we will go ahead and get started. I know we still have some folks joining us, but thank you so much, everyone, for being here with Brian, Lanier, and I for our session, our community event on allyship, advocacy in the workplace. We are thrilled to be partnering with Brian this month for Black History Month and for several workshops, both community events and Ask the Expert sessions, as well as full-length workshops on topics of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and especially in today's world, just creating healthier, more collaborative, inclusive work environments. So thrilled to be partnering with Brian on this initiative, February, and really just moving forward. So all of you, if you're new to these sessions, if you found us through Eventbrite, if these are new faces, my name is Carly. I'm the director of community over at Learnit, and we host these 45 to 60 minute community events every other Friday morning. So there's 2 a month at 8:30 a.m. Pacific time, and they're always centered around a quarterly theme. So our kind of theme for January, February, and March has been around design thinking, and specifically in February around designing more inclusive workspaces. As always, these sessions are based on full-length workshops that we offer. So this session on allyship, we're just getting started with this topic in this session, but we do have a full-length workshop on that, which we'll speak on more at the end of the session. And they're always led by subject matter experts and guest speakers. So a couple of housekeeping items just before I introduce you to Brian. This session will be recorded, as well as we'll make a few of the slides available in our community platform called Offsite, which is free to join, and I will speak on after this. So stick around. And also we're using Zoom webinar. So please do bring your questions into the room. There's a Q&A section up here. You can go ahead and add your questions to that. That way I can compile those for Brian, and we'll take those throughout the session and save time at the end. So please do use that Q&A section if you have a specific question. And with that, I'm really excited to introduce all of you to Brian. Brian is really our anchor and our advisor for all topics around diversity, equity, and inclusion, and leadership. He's been a leader for some of the biggest names in America and really around the world. He's worked for Starbucks, he's worked for KFC, and holds a master's degree in business, and also studied journalism at the University of Houston, but really has been instrumental in helping us kind of address these topics with our clients, and just thrilled to have him come and be here with our community today. So thank you, Brian, for being here, and I'll hand it over to you.
Awesome. Great, Carly. Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. I've had the privilege Carly's invited me to do. I think this is my 4th opportunity now to do one of these sessions. And I love when people come on and hearing where they're from all over the world. I'm based in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. The picture you saw of my bio page a moment ago was literally out in my backyard. I live here with my spouse, Yvonne, in our what we call our forever house. And it doesn't look like it did in the picture. You know, right now it's -8 degrees Celsius. And I shoveled snow this morning and walked the dog, but I'm happy to be here with you all now. All right. Our conversation this morning is on allyship. And I intend to have it be as interactive as possible, as interactive as we possibly can, with me sitting in Calgary and you being at home and me not seeing you. Towards that end, though, I do want you to know Carly is going to be my full partner here. So from time to time, she might interrupt me with what she sees in the chat, or she might have something that somebody is saying that I don't see on the screen, and she has full freedom to jump right in. We're going to be leading this together. I'm going to go through some slides here. Let me just pull my slides up on the screen. And let's make sure here. Carly, can you come off mute, please, and just let me know that you can see the single screen that says allyship, being an advocate for all?
Yep, we're all good. Thanks, Brian.
Thank you. So in the teaser that we gave you about this course, I just want a presence that our program, as Carly said, this is a taste. Like I go to the ice cream store and get a taste of the ice cream. We're not going to cover everything in an hour, but this is a taste of our fuller curriculum that we have on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And in this course, when we work with people, we're looking at having you move from thinking about to acting for all, thinking about what is it like to be an ally for one person to what can I do to take on being an ally for all people. So our allyship learning session, it actually prepares people in your organization to intervene in situations where they spot non-inclusive behavior, such as hearing a colleague unconsciously stating a bias in a meeting, or when you hear somebody, when you're observing someone being constantly interrupted. So our training is designed to equip you to act confidently as an ally in all situations, not only for colleagues who are from underrepresented groups historically, but for your entire workforce. So having said that, what we intend to cover today are the following. We're going to spend a little time up front actually setting the context for today's conversation, setting the table, if you will. If you can see over my shoulder in my house here, we have our dining room. And typically we have, Yvonne and I have been married before. We have adult kids, we have grandkids. So we have an extended family Sunday dinner with 9 or 11 of us, depending on who's in town, around the dinner. And my job is to set the table, if you will. And I'm very meticulous about setting the table. So we want to spend some time up front on this conversation, literally setting the context or setting the table for what we're talking about before we dive right in. We'll also coach you on how to listen to the conversation in a way you can get the most out of it. We'll also dig into allyship, our definition and our approach. I saw one comment in the chat already saying, hey, allyship, do you mean alliance? Does that mean the same thing? No, it doesn't. So we're going to take some time to give you our definition. There are a lot of definitions out there. We'll give you our definition. And there are a lot of different approaches out there to taking on allyship. We'll give you our approach. We'll engage you in a conversation designed to have you look at why allyship matters. What stops people from being an ally in the first place, and the 3 stages of growth as an ally. And then lastly, in our hour together or less, we'll coach you on how to apply all of this to your life, how to apply being an ally or allyship or what we're offering, how to apply it to work, how to apply it to your organization, or how to apply it to your life. Okay, now with that said, I want to start off with setting the table, if you will. So let's look at allyship as an inquiry versus allyship as the truth. What do I mean by that? Well, I've been doing this work for a long time. I still put myself in other diversity, equity, and inclusion seminars and training courses myself, and I'm an avid reader, and I believe in continuous lifelong learning. And when you Google the topic, when I Googled the topic allyship, I got over 800 million. There were so many numbers. It was even more than that, but I'm not sure if it's a trillion or not. Or a billion or not. But I got over 800 million hits on Google alone about allyship. So this conversation, it may trigger something for you. I might show a slide or I might have a conversation. And you'll say, no, that's not right. And then you'll tune me out. So I'm inviting you to participate in a way that has you listen and has you interact in this conversation, not as I'm giving you the truth, like a tablet, like from mountain on high here, like you must follow this. No. Nothing of what I'm saying is the truth. Nothing of what I'm saying is the answer. I'm sharing with you what I've either researched myself, and I'll cite where I got it from as we go through our session today, and or what I've seen work with our clients or other case studies that I've looked at. And if by the end of this session, if you don't want to try it on, you're under no obligation to try it on, okay? I'm offering it to you to try it on and even practice it, more importantly, after our time today. So this is allyship as an inquiry, not allyship as the truth or the right answer. All right. So I want to start off with an invitation, and this is an invitation on how to listen to the conversation to get the most out of it. So this is an invitation to brave space. And some of you that have participated in sessions with me before know that I get a lot from Mickey Scott Bay Jones. She's a poet. She is an author, keynote speaker. Huffington Post recently acknowledged her as one of the up and coming leaders of her generation and of her niche. And I'm going to read a poem on the next page. And the poem is an invitation to brave space, because I'm inviting you to listen to the conversation in a way that has you step out of your comfort zone. I'm inviting you to listen and participate in this conversation in a way that has you step into what she is distinguishing as brave space. At the end of the poem, I'm going to ask you to come and let Carly and I know what resonates about this poem for you. I'll ask you to let us know what, if anything, jumps out at you. Okay, so here's Mickey Scott Bay Jones's poem on an invitation to brave space, and I'm inviting you to take that on for our time together. So together, we will create brave space, because there's no such thing as a safe space. We exist in the real world. We all carry scars, and we've all caused wounds. In this space, we seek to turn down the volume of the outside world. We amplify voices that fight to be heard elsewhere. We call each other to more truth and love. We have the right to start somewhere and continue to grow. We have the responsibility to examine what we think we know. We will not be perfect. This space will not be perfect. It will not always be what we wish it would be, but it will always be our brave space together, and we will work on it side by side, by Mickey Scott Bay Jones. So an invitation to brave space. I'm inviting you to stand there today. So I'd like to hear from you. You can put it in the chat, let Carly know. What about this poem resonates with you? And also, are you willing to practice brave space for the balance of today's session? In other words, these are parts that resonate with me. Are you willing to turn down the volume of the outside world? Are you willing to not multitask and actually be present for this call? Are you willing to examine what you think you know about allyship versus be defensive? Are you willing to have today not be perfect? Are you willing to actually allow us to experiment here and inquire? So I'd like to hear from some people. Carly, what do we have in the queue?
Yeah, Charlene and a couple of folks are sharing the idea of that there's no such thing as a safe space, or the difference between brave space and safe space. Another case also shared that we all carry scars and have caused scars. So sharing that empathy is super important. Yeah.
Brilliant. Great. Thank you. And then I'd also like to know how many of you are willing to participate today coming from Brave Space, whatever resonates with you. You know, you can just say yes or no, or you can even write it down on your own piece of paper so that you have something in front of you. Yes, I'm going to participate in a way that I don't normally participate. I'm going to actually stay present. I'm going to actually turn down the volume of the outside world. Do we have any comments about people's willingness to participate today from Brave Space?
Yeah, a lot of yeses in the chat and agreement that that will be this, and also you shared that it's our responsibility to examine kind of how we show up. So
Good.
a lot of agreement on that as well.
Great. Thank you, Carly. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, of course.
Well, I'm glad somebody touched on safe space and brave space. Let's take a moment and look at that a little bit deeper. So with safe space, because we're going to move into allyship. We're just shaping how we're listening today. So safe space, make no mistake, we're not saying brave space is better than safe space. Safe space is a space where there's dignity and respect, and there's emotional and physical and psychological safety and comfort, and it's fundamental to survival. So make no mistake, we're saying job one, you want to make sure you, your employees, your team workers, your families always have fundamentally a safe space. Now, there's a difference between how we're relating to safe space and how we're relating to brave space. I'm inviting you to consider that while safe space is fundamental to our survival, not only our physical survival, but our survival in society, you know, making sure that we have the experience of being treated with dignity, that we treat others with respect, etc. It can also be a limit on our opportunity to grow and develop. Now, why would I say that safe space, while it's foundational, somebody put in the chat, why would I also say in the next breath that it can be a limit to our growth and our development? Somebody? Do we have any comments in the chat, Carly, about the limits, why safe space can be a limit to our growth and development?
Yeah, I think a couple people, Dorothy said it nice and succinctly. She says comfort isn't linked to growth. Staying in the safe space limits your growth. Gloria echoes that as well.
Brilliant. Thank you, Dorothy. Thank you, Gloria. So when we look at brave space, the way we're looking at it, yeah, it does take being uncomfortable. When we work out, you know, no pain, no gain. If you're not getting some outside your comfort zone, there's no growth and learning. And we appreciate that it takes courage, even courage to come off and put something in the chat on a call today. And brave space is you're discovering, examining what we think we know. It also requires that we be present. So we took this time, we're setting the table. We set the table so far by asking you to consider we're not giving you the truth or the right answer about, or the only answer about allyship. And then we are giving you an invitation. You can say no, you can say yes. The invitation to step into brave space. We want to make it clear we're not saying to be stupid or silly. You know, you do want to be safe, obviously. And where one grows is with brave space. Okay. Now, with that said, let's look at allyship here. As I said at the top of the call, there are over 800 million things that come up in under 1 second when you type in the term allyship. So allyship, being an advocate for all, is the name of our course. We're giving you a taste of it today. Every single word that we use is here deliberately, and we want to take a moment to actually give you our definitions. Now, again, a caution, I can't see you, so I don't know that this is going to be the case for you. Sometimes when we do our sessions and we give people our definitions, sometimes it can drive up that fast brain thinking, no, that's wrong, or yeah, that's right, or I agree with it. Again, I'm inviting you to try on what we're offering, and I'm inviting you to let go of anything that comes up like, oh no, I don't agree with that. Just try it on. So this is a definition of ally, and this is a definition that we've borrowed from research done by the Racial Equity Institute. an organization dedicated to anti-racism and ending systemic racism. They're based out of Greensboro, North Carolina. They've been around for years. Very good organization that does a lot of research. And we're going with their definition of an ally. An ally is someone who makes the commitment and effort to recognize their privilege based on gender, class, race, sexual identity, etc., and work in solidarity with the oppressed groups in the struggle for justice. All right, so we're going to say more about that when we get into later on in our conversation about the 3 stages of allyship. But we wanted to have you get, that's our fundamental definition of what it is to be an ally. Then the next part of the term that we use in the name of this course is being. So by being an advocate for all, what do we mean? We mean it's distinct from doing. When we use the term being, we mean someone who is authentically and naturally being an ally as their true self-expression. So although we will give you the 3 stages, if you simply write them down, memorize them, and try to be a robot and repeat them, it'll be fake. So we are offering that this is something to be practiced. This is something to be ultimately, if you take on being an ally at the 3rd stage that we're going to get into, but before the end of this call, it takes on a natural self-expression. And then advocate. So an advocate is a person who publicly supports or recommends a particular cause or policy. And for all we mean our focus is having all people experience being included with a sense of, I do belong here. I do belong here exactly as I am, and I do belong here exactly as I'm not. So when we say the title of our training program is Allyship, Being an Advocate for All, this is what we mean. This is what we mean by advocate, ally. This is what we mean by being. This is what we mean by advocate. This is what we mean by all. I know that's a lot there. So another way of summing it up for us, we want to borrow from Gandhi. Gandhi, civil rights leader, stood for India being independent, and Nobel Peace Prize winner. And he said, this is a slight modification of his exact quote, but he said, be the change you wish to see in the world. So when we talk about being an ally, we're talking about not doing something to help somebody else out. We're talking about actually being the change that you wish to see in the world. And Carly, anything on the chat, or am I good to keep going here?
We're good to keep going. Yeah, we're good to keep going. Thank you, Shanette. I'll address that. You can put your question in the chat as well. But Brian, for now, I think we're good. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Okay, so I am going to ask for some people just to think about, well, why allyship matters. So I do invite, I'd love to hear from 1 or 2 people. Why does allyship matter? Why do you think being an ally or allyship matters? Somebody?
Yeah, Gloria says, because you need to stand up for others when needed. Carlotta says to make change in the world. And Carol also says there's a lot coming through the chat, but that in order to influence change, it's important to be an ally.
Okay, got that. Thank you. All right. Again, we're in the inquiry. So even if your chat didn't get read, please stay engaged and keep looking. And our approach is one of, it's extremely important to create an organization where everyone feels included, as we said a moment ago. So this first quote here is from Thomas Schelling. He's an economist who won the Nobel Prize in economics in 2005. And he actually observed that large social consequences can flow from small adjustments in individual behavior. And that actually came up, as he was studying what had people get along and cooperate and what had people go into conflict. So this aspect of allyship, a small group of people can evoke a large amount of change. It starts with our individual behavior. An expression of what he's pointing to is if you think of George Floyd's tragic murder, one person, and then people literally got protested, and people that hadn't even considered before took on being allies of people that were from a diverse group than they were. And that came from people taking on social consciousness, and that came from people's expanding their awareness. So that's what we're pointing to when we say large social consequences can flow from small adjustments in individual behavior. So another aspect that we're asking you to consider why allyship matters is allies are seen as being more effective than non-allies. And this is from a variety of research that's been done. So allies actually are seen as being more effective when they stand up to confront non-inclusive behavior. In other words, if someone is walking the talk of being an ally, as we're going to distinguish what it is to be an ally, then when they go to confront some non-inclusive behavior, they're much more effective than someone who is quote unquote a spectator, and kind of jumps in or jumps out, but they don't walk the talk. Allies are seen as being more effective than non-allies when they advocate for diversity. So again, when they're actually, they're taking on being an ally, and then they advocate for it, and when they call for organizational change. And there is research to support this. One ally versus many supporters. So studies have shown as well that when you have one person authentically taking on being an ally for another person, it gives that person more strength to step into brave space than if you had a larger, many supporters, giving quote unquote average support. One study talks about an employee, somebody that worked in an organization, and they had an ally for them. They identified as being LGBTQ, and they actually came out, and they acknowledged that their ally was one that gave him the strength and gave him an access to coming out in their company versus other people that had many people, quote unquote, supporting them. And then why should I become an ally? That is a question that a rhetorical question I have for each of you. And as you look, because some of the people on here, I'm guessing you are allies, you're making a difference. Other people on here might be looking at or flirting with the idea of being an ally. Here are some questions you can inquire into. Does it fit my personal or organizational values? Is it the right thing to do for me? Is it authentically a fit for me? It's an opportunity as well for personal learning and development. I know that when I've taken on being an ally, I've learned things, grown in things, and with other groups of people that I didn't typically know before. And why be an ally is allies attract allies. When people step up as allies, other people around them, support them as well. Okay, so now let's move into, what stops people from being an ally? I'll just pause here and I'll ask rhetorically, and perhaps some people want to just put something in the chat as well. And if they do, Carly will let me know. But I want to pause for a moment. What do you think stops people from actually being an ally? And Carly, do we have anything before I keep going?
Yeah, a lot of people are using the word fear.
Yeah.
Yeah, prejudiced or the bystander effect, Sarah shares as well. Or they can't relate, so they kind of distance themselves from people that might be different from them.
Well said. Yeah, that's one of two things is what we've seen in our research and working with organizations. The first thing is fear. So it's fear of not wanting to cause a conflict. See which ones of these, if any, relate to you. Not wanting to cause a conflict, or fear of embarrassing someone or hurting someone's feelings, or fear of your thoughts. You have thoughts like, hey, it's none of my business, or it's not happening to me. or fear of not knowing the person or persons well enough to say something, or fear of getting labeled as too sensitive, or fear of getting stereotyped, or fear of saying something wrong in the process of speaking up. Now, if it's not fear, the other thing that we've seen with our research and our studies is people have a lack of knowledge of effective approaches to being an ally. So I want to be an ally. Yeah, I got the fear, but I really want to jump right in. But they jump in and they make a bigger mess because they haven't been trained or educated on effective approaches to being an ally. So what stops people from being an ally, we've seen, is one of two things. They jump in without the knowledge, without the education, or they are stopped by fear. And look for yourself, which of these come up for you. Okay, so now we want to offer the 3 stages of growth for effective allies. Now, the 3 stages of growth for effective allies model, we've tweaked it a bit from Kenneth Edwards, who's a PhD, and he's done a lot of research on allies. And so we've tweaked it a bit to use our own language. I'll include a little bit of what he said as well. So the first stage of being an ally is being an ally to you. Being an ally to you. Keith Edwards calls it ally for self-interest. So this is primarily motivated to protect those one cares about from being hurt. This is usually from a personal connection rather than to a group or an issue. This has the ally be seen as the protector who intervenes on the behalf of those who experience oppression, and often without consulting them. So for example, if I'm at work and Barbara is my protege, I'm looking out for Barbara, and I see Barbara as someone I have to protect subconsciously. So when Barbara brings me an issue or something, I'm like, try to be Superman. I'm here to save the day. But that actually diminishes Barbara and how effective she can be, because people, when truth is told, they don't need help. If I'm being an ally to one person, and if I'm coming from being a protector, then that has me be bigger and stronger, and that diminishes the other person. Now, most of this is unconscious. Okay, this is a pitfall that some people can fall into. Remember, stick with me with brave space. Be willing to try this on. Avoid just discounting it. We've got more to come if that's coming up for you. So when one is being an ally, for example, with the example of Barbara as my protege, and she brings something to me, I'm going to have a bent towards she's needs my help. I might have a blind spot and I might miss some things, like some of the unconscious barriers to Barbara, some of what Barbara might be dealing with that are barriers to inclusivity. Barbara being a female, and Barbara being a younger demographic than I am. Barbara not actually having seeing people that look like her that are in senior management, for example. So we're just putting a bright light on these 3 different stages, and we're having you look at the pros and the cons. A pro is Barbara the protege, or that one person that you're being an ally to. They get all of you. The con is you can diminish them. It's like giving somebody a fish, distinct from teaching them how to fish. They can become dependent on you. Okay. The next level is what we call being an ally to them. So, and Edwards talks about this is aspiring ally for altruism. So we want to move you from being an ally to one person, to moving to being an ally to them. And this is a focus on a group. So this is after you've had your unconscious bias training. This is after you've had some fundamental training where you're looking and being self-reflective. This is where you're being more responsible for your own blind spots. This is where you see individuals in the context of a group. So you still see Barbara, but you see Barbara in the context of a woman in business. You see her as part, and you start to investigate, and you start to look at, okay, what are some of the challenges for the group that Barbara identifies as an example. Now here, you're no longer looking at Barbara as the individual that quote unquote needs help. You're looking at a group, whether it be women, whether it be Black, whether it be people of color, whether it be LGBTQ, excuse me, and you're looking at how can I be an ally to them? Now, the downside of this is you still have yourself as an exception. You still can look at in your blind spot unconsciously, you can still look at it's up to you to protect this group of people. Then if you do that, then you start to look at other people that don't, that exhibit non-inclusive behavior. You could be looking at them as they're bad, you're right, they're good, you're looking at good, bad, right, wrong, which can also just be counterproductive to what you're really after. And you can start to have non-inclusive behaviors yourself, thinking that you're actually making a difference where you're calling people out versus actually having all people have the experience of being included. So the third stage is being an ally to all. And we want you to practice and practice over time, getting yourself to stage 3. So even if you're a straight white male CEO, it takes on the mindset that we all need allies. And in stage 3, you're working with those who experience oppression and collaboration and partnership to end systems of oppression. And you're working towards social justice, and the allies are not only free to the oppressed, but they're also free to the liberated, and they can reconnect to their own full humanity and authenticity. So here, when you're being an ally to all, you're looking at what are the systemic barriers, not only for an individual, not only for a particular group, but you're creating and you're being an advocate that all the systemic barriers are being addressed and being taken on. Again, this is a subset. I know we could get a lot deeper into it, and we actually do get a lot deeper into it than the time that we have for right now. If you're interested in getting at the source of this, we've just taken, sourced and adapted this from Aspiring Social Justice Ally Identification Development, a conceptual model written by Keith E. Edwards, where he gets into this a lot deeper than we have here in the last few moments. But what we're not saying that being an ally to one is bad. We're not saying that being an ally to all is good. We're saying that there are pros and cons of each level. And we're saying that the first 2 levels, an ally to you and an ally to them, can have some things that are in your blind spot that you want to be responsible for. Okay, so ultimately, it's about inclusion. Ultimately, through practice, we're coaching people that we work with to become an ally to all, where you have that, and it does take practice. So how do you access moving to the next stage is a question we also engage with. First, it starts with mindset. So the mindset is that this is a journey. It's not a one and done. If you're coming on with the expectation that you're going to take a 1-hour course or take 2 1-hour courses, and then you're one and done, then you're not going to be effective at making a lasting change to the whole conversation of inclusivity or diversity or equity in any organization. So you want to take on a mindset that this is a journey, not a one and done. Also, we invite people to commit to cultural humility. What's cultural humility? Well, doctors Melanie Travelon and Anne Jan Murray Garcia, doctors themselves, they looked at what was happening in the southwest part of the US with people that identified as Latin not following doctors' orders. So they did this study, they looked at hundreds of people, and what they found was that the patients weren't listening to the doctors because of the doctors' arrogance. What was going on there was the doctors had a mindset of, I've already gone, applied to medical school. I'm better than most that I got accepted to medical school. I've had all these years of training. I've done my residency. And now I'm telling the patient what to do, and the patient's not listening to him. But what they found out was the doctors lacked what they came up with the term cultural humility. The doctors in that case study that they did didn't take on cultural humility as they distinguished it, which is treating people with respect and humility, which is also includes being a lifelong learner. I don't care that you've gone to medical school. You are practicing medicine. It's a lifelong learner. By the way, my best friend's a doctor. If there's doctors here, my son-in-law is an ER doctor. So this is not a slight against doctors. I'm simply citing this research that these two doctors did when they came up with the term cultural humility, and I'm offering this to you to practice. Be willing to be critically self-reflective, and also advocating for institutional equity and equitable access to all resources for all. So an example of what they found in their research that's an example of the lack of cultural humility that they saw is a particular hospital had a policy that when a doctor had to inform the patient about their status, only one family member could be in the room. But the people in this study that identified as Latin said, "What do you mean only one? I got 12 people in my family outside in the waiting room. They're all coming in." And the doctor said, "No, no, no, no." But when the doctors started getting trained in cultural humility and they started to listen for what that particular culture identified with and what they needed, they transformed their relationship there. And they actually, that's an example of how allyship made a difference, allyship for all over time. And then also how to access moving to the next stage is practice. This is all about practice. So I know in the last 45 minutes or so, we've given you just a small taste of what we offer. I know that it's been like one way, and I apologize that it can't be even more interactive. And if you're interested in doing more or getting into this, I'll stay on at the end too. So I'll be around for questions and comments. And then also you can reach me through Learnit as well, through Carly's department. And we do have our allyship, our full course. We have a 2-hour module. We also have a full curriculum that we can shape for any organization. Here's just a little blurb on it, and you can get that through Carly's office as well. And then in terms of what we've covered today, so what we covered at the start, allyship is an inquiry. We said none of this is the truth or the one and only or the right way. We've invited you to come to the conversation open to an inquiry. We also gave you an invitation to brave space at the top of the call. So we said safe space is critical. You want to make sure you are psychological and physically and emotionally safe at all times. Only you can make sure that you are treated with dignity and respect as well, and that's important. However, we said, while safe space is fundamental, we said we invite you to brave space, to go outside your comfort zone. And we invited you to take that on and practice that for the hour that we're together today. And then we gave you our definition of allyship and our approach. We said, if you Google it, there are over 800 million hits on allyship. So I'm sure people out there have heard other things as well. Excuse me, I'm about to sneeze. Excuse me, they usually come in.
Bless you.
Thank you. So allyship, we gave you our definition and approach. We engaged you into why does allyship matter? And we asked you, why does it matter? And we said that, if you look, and we quoted the economist that got the Nobel Prize in 2005, where he did a study of people, and anything that's been large that has impacted society, large, started off with one small group of people standing for something. Allyship matters, standing for people. And we looked at what stops people from being an ally. And we said it's one of two things, either a fear, and we went through the various aspects of what stops people from fear, or it's a lack of knowledge or a lack of education and training for watching out for the pitfalls. And then we gave you the 3 stages of growth as an ally, essentially being an ally for one, or being an ally for some, or being an ally for all. We said ultimately where we stand is we're at to have an organization where everybody feels included, where everybody has a sense of belonging, and they don't have to fit inside of a square, where they, no matter who they are, they feel accepted and that they belong exactly the way that they are and exactly the way that they aren't. We said ultimately we all need allies. And then lastly, how to apply all this to your life, and how to apply all this to your life takes on a practice. It begins with a mindset of actually, this is not one and done, it's a journey. And then it takes practicing cultural humility. And we talked about cultural humility. And then it actually takes on what I didn't say, but just having some empathy for yourself. You and I are not going to be perfect. You will make mistakes. But if you stay focused on what you're ultimately standing for, in my case, it's about inclusion for all, it'll work out. Okay. So applying all this to work, I'm inviting people as we're wrapping up, because people know you're here, I think they know you're here. So at least one person might know you're here doing this course. So when asked, what will you share about having participated in today's session? And I'm inviting you to put that in the chat, please. In other words, what did you learn today? Or what did you discover today? Or what were you inspired by today? Or what resonated with you today? And then also, I'm inviting people to share what's one new action that you'll take from having participated in today's session. So you can respond to either of those in the chat, please. What are you taking away from today? And what's one new action? Okay.
Yeah, Brian, thank you so much. Carlota says being an ally takes practice. Continue to practice being an ally to all is, a lot of it's not going to happen overnight.
Yes.
It's going to take practice. And also Gloria shared, not being a protector, taking the protector's mindset of disempowering, kind of like that. I think a lot of people got a lot out of that ally to one versus the ally to them or ally to all. So those were some of the comments that came through. I wanted to address, there was a question that came up kind of repeatedly, I think once from, let me see, I'm just pulling up my notes. Once from Shanette, and then once from another community member. Just around, I think some of the ways to practice allyship. Around one, Shanette asks, is it more effective to be an accomplice or an ally? That was her question. And the other one that someone touched on was just, can you clarify how to be the most effective ally? Like, is just building trusting relationships, like kind of at the foundation of where to start, especially I think for people, if you're new to new to a new environment, or you're really new to this, like this is something that you're just starting to incorporate, like what's the best way to kind of start, if that makes sense.
Yeah. That's a great question. And I don't know that I'm going to have an answer that's going to satisfy you without an actual dialogue, which we're somewhat limited to, and I'll try my best. It really will come down to where you're standing in the first place. So I have committed to cultural humility, and I am offering for you to take on cultural humility if you're interested. What's that? Committing to being a lifelong learner, committing to having people around you leave with the experience of being respected and with dignity, being willing to be critically self-reflective, as well as you start with those three. So for example, I led a session yesterday to some people. It was much more interactive. It was about 26 people. And one of the participants said something and I guffawed, I laughed out loud. And like the thought was, are you crazy? Now, when they said that, when I heard myself say that, given that I have a background of being culturally, I caught myself and I apologized to the woman. I said, I apologize. I had a knee-jerk reaction and I had a reaction to what you said. And I know that if I heard how I reacted, I know that I would have been diminished. I want to check in with you. How did that leave you? And then we had a great back and forth. And I was able to ask her to repeat what she said again. And I could hear it beyond my knee-jerk reaction. So why am I sharing that? I'm sharing that to let you know, even though I've been doing this a long time, it won't be perfect. People will make mistakes. And the more you can practice, like practicing a muscle, being in a brave space, being willing to say, I messed up here, or being willing to say, I just said something and I want to check it out. How did that leave you? So that's one thing I would say. Something else I want to say that came up with the other question that I heard about would I rather have an accomplice or an ally? I was in a session about 2 months ago with a group of people, and one woman took exception at the very fact that someone was talking about being an ally. She says, I don't want an ally. I want someone, an accomplice, standing right beside me. She said, however, what I assert was missing was a common definition of ally. Because that woman that had that reaction, I don't want an ally, I'm asserting that she didn't have the same approach and definition out of the other over 800 million definitions out there on Google that we have. We are not advocating an ally as somebody who's stronger and helps people. I don't want an ally like that, because that makes me feel smaller. I want someone that's going to that listens to me in a way that empowers me. I want someone that actually is willing to be critically self-reflective themselves. I want someone who, is willing to be in a brave space with me. And I've had those kind of leaders in my career. And I can, count them on one hand, Jay McGuire, and the difference that he made when I was at KFC. And he didn't look like me, and he had a diverse background than I did, but he went out of his way to make sure that I was supported throughout my entire career, pulled me aside, said things, mentored me. He was an ally. He never made me feel like he was protecting me or helping me. Okay, so I've said a lot right there. I hope that was useful to the two people that asked that question.
Thank you. Thank you, Brian. It certainly was helpful to me too. And just that difference, I think the piece around making someone feel smaller is even, again, it's not from a leadership side. Like you said, it's a blind spot, I think, for many of us or for many people. And so just taking that approach, I don't know. That's just a huge self-awareness and a mindset shift, I think. So thank you. We're getting a lot of positive feedback in the chat here as well. So great. Well, we still have a little bit of time. Everyone, if you have additional questions as you're kind of processing this, please do put them in the chat. We have a little bit more time. I want to just share how you can get access to today's session. And I'll go ahead and pull up just my slides here around how you can dive deeper with us as well. So like Brian mentioned, we do have a couple of full-length workshops specifically on allyship. So our 2-hour workshop will build directly from what we just shared today, but there'll be breakout rooms. It's a lot smaller group. There's time to share personal experiences. So our next public workshop on allyship is April 27th. Brian is also leading inclusive leadership on March 8th. Really excited for that workshop as well. And we also have sessions on unconscious bias and microaggression coming up in April. So again, those are open to anyone. If you're interested in bringing these sessions to your group privately, to your organization as a private session, we do create customized workshops for organizations at scale. So please do feel free to reach out to myself or Brian with questions on that. Happy to discuss more in depth. As well as today's recording is completely free and accessible. It'll be on our YouTube channel, and it will also be in our community platform called Offsite. So in there, we also have Ask the Expert sessions. Brian is going to be leading a quick 30-minute session on microaggression and how to address that on Monday morning. So we hope you can share and tune in for that. As well as if you're attending all of our community events, we also have badges of certification certification. So everyone that's attended all of our events in January, February, and March will get a badge of certification in design thinking. So just some motivation to join. It's completely free. Invite a friend. We love learning in community with you, and we really wouldn't be doing this without all of you, especially a lot of you that have been with us since the pandemic, since the beginning of the pandemic. So just thank you everyone for being open-minded and sharing in this community. I'll stick around for another couple minutes. If anyone has any questions, we can address that for the next couple minutes. But Brian, thank you so much for your time and your openness in leading us this morning.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Okay, I hope to see you around the campus. All right. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you on offsite. We'll see you soon. Take care.